Hi class, in this section of the lecture we're going to cover the basics of venous functional anatomy and the pulmonary circuit. So we just finished talking about capillaries and their general function in the body, the different types of capillaries. Let's switch here and start looking closer at how veins work as a system. So in general, veins have a very low blood pressure compared to our arteries, and that's because the arteries are closer to the heart. So the further away from the heart you are, in terms of the blood pump itself, the lower the pressure is going to be. So there's general mechanisms that are needed in order to maintain the flow of blood through these very low pressure vessels. First, there are valves. There are valves that are within the tunica intima, basically little extra folds that will prevent the backflow of blood backwards, basically. So it's maintaining the forward movement of blood through the vessels. And the contraction of skeletal muscles also helps with this. So if you think of, maybe this, is there a picture? I think there's a picture on the next slide. No, there's not. So in general, think about the blood that's flowing from your toes and your feet, right? They have to go all the way up your legs if you're standing in order to get back up to the heart. So there's these little checkpoints, and as the blood gets pushed, it goes through these little valves. The valves open and then close as the blood's going through, they close. So now this blood can't go back down to your feet. It's just going to keep continuing until it gets to the next little checkpoint, and so on and so forth. The skeletal muscle surrounding these veins is also going to act as a pump to squeeze. Right, when your skeletal muscles contract, they squeeze those surrounding veins, and that is going to push that blood in the direction that it's supposed to go also. So the coordination between the valves allowing unidirectional flow of blood and the contraction of the surrounding skeletal muscles, that's going to keep the blood flowing up to the heart, even from something like a standing position when you're trying to get blood from your toes all the way back up. So these skeletal muscles squeeze the veins, permitting that blood flow in the direction that it's supposed to, preventing it from going back down into the capillaries. And if the valves don't work properly, the blood can actually pool, causing the veins to kind of get stretched out, creating varicose veins in some cases, or a very painful distortion of the surrounding tissues in the case of like hemorrhoids. Hemorrhoids are enlarged veins around the anal sphincter muscle. So here you see what I was talking about with those valves are veins that are, for instance, in our lower leg, have lots of valves in them. They're probably even more scattered than just in this diagram, which is just showing you two valves, but you get the idea. As the skeletal muscle is contracting, see how it's squeezing the vein right here? So all that blood is getting pushed up. Sorry, my dog's just checking us out in here. That blood's getting pushed up and squeezed past that valve checkpoint, and then that valve will shut as that muscle relaxes, and it will prevent the backflow of blood down into the feet. So the total blood volume distribution throughout the body is uneven. It's not equally distributed between veins, arteries, and capillaries. The systemic vein system has more than 64% of all the blood volume at any given time. So the majority of your blood is within your veins, and that's because they're very low pressure. The blood's not zipping through there very quickly. Of that venous network, which is about 3.5 liters or so, around 1 liter is just within the liver, the bone marrow, and the skin. So those are three major areas where blood kind of pools and rests for a little bit so that it can exchange nutrients and do all those things. The systemic arteries only have 13% of your total blood volume, and the remaining is between the capillaries, the heart, and the pulmonary circuit. So there's the overall distribution. Again, the large volume of the veins, they have a very large diameter compared to arteries, and the fact that there's very low blood pressure is the reason why there's so much blood in the veins. So the process of vasoconstriction is when the smooth muscle fibers in the veins contract. This is going to reduce the diameter of the veins and therefore reducing the amount of blood within that particular vein or within the venous system in general. The method of maintaining overall blood volume in the artery even with significant blood loss, is to vasoconstrict. So this is controlled by special vasomotor centers that are within the medulla oblongata, and sympathetic nerves are going to stimulate that smooth muscle contraction within the medium-sized veins to reduce their diameter, reduce blood flow, prevent blood loss, etc. So there you see just that innervation and the effect that it can have on the veins. So when there's no sympathetic innervation, they're relaxed, but when the sympathetic nervous system is activated, our veins are going to contract and get smaller in diameter, reducing the blood flow in those veins and then accelerating the blood flow to different areas of the body. You can pause the video here, go back and review this little section about veins. We're going to continue on with how veins are created, blood vessel formation. It's a process that involves vasculogenesis. Vasculogenesis is when the first blood cell vessels are forming. It's a process called hemangioblasts, are the cells that create these endothelial cells. So around day 7 of embryonic development, there's little, basically blood islands within this yolk sac that is surrounding the ball of cells at this point. So those hemangioblasts are basically the center of this little blood island, and they're going to differentiate into the hematopoietic stem cells that give rise to all of the other stem cells that give rise to all of the other blood, right? So those hemangioblasts are that are within the periphery are called angioblasts. They're going to combine to form the first blood cells, and those angioblasts will basically remodel the little blood islands, so to speak, into a very primitive network of capillaries and then into larger blood vessels. So the vasculogenesis involves the cardinal veins, the aortic arches, and the dorsal aorta. So the cardinal veins are the venous connections which will basically form the superior and inferior vena cava. The aortic arches is the basic arterial channels that form the carotid artery, the aortic arch, the pulmonary artery, the main arteries that kind of branch off of the heart. And then the dorsal aorta becomes the descending aorta. So it all forms separately. And then the process of angiogenesis. So you had vasculogenesis forming the veins, and angiogenesis, which is the growth of new blood vessels from pre-existing blood vessels. Now that we have this basic framework of blood vessels, now the dorsal aorta, the cardinal veins that were formed through vasculogenesis are going to further branch and create more blood vessels through angiogenesis. So vasculogenesis happens first, lays the groundwork down for all the large vessels, and then angiogenesis continues that perforating blood vessels throughout the body. So here you see the process with these hemangioblasts scattered throughout the body, a little blood island made of the angioblasts and the hematopoietic stem cells, differentiating into our basic capillary networks and forming vena cava, branches, etc. So this is the same process, just one slide at a time. And you can pause the video here, go back and review this section if you need to. We're going to add one more piece onto this video lecture, and then we'll stop with this sequence. So we'll talk about the pulmonary circuit in this lecture. So just a quick review of the circuits. You have your pulmonary circuit, which is pulmonary arteries, pulmonary capillaries, pulmonary veins, heart, pulmonary arteries, pulmonary capillaries, pulmonary veins, heart, right? And then you have your systemic, which is leaving from your heart. You have your veins, your capillaries, your arteries, your heart, your veins, your capillaries, your veins, your heart, arteries, capillaries, veins, your heart, right? So you have this thing going on with your lungs and this thing going on with your heart, and they're happening at the same time, right? So, and remember, your pulmonary circuit is involving the right side of your heart, and the systemic circuit is involving the left side of your heart. So here it is in a better detail, better than this, right? My little wax on, wax off demonstration with my hands. So all the blood in the whole body comes back, except the lungs, comes back to your right atrium. And then from the right atrium, all that blood goes into the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, it goes to the pulmonary circuit, pulmonary arteries, pulmonary capillaries, which are within the lungs, and the pulmonary veins, which dump back into the left side of the heart at the left atrium. Then that blood goes to the left ventricle, and then it goes out of the aorta and to the rest of the body, to all of our systemic circuits, those peripheral capillaries, then the peripheral veins, and then back to the right atrium, etc. That's the whole circuit. This is showing you the venous side. Here we introduce the venous side and the pulmonary circuit, right? So all this venous blood comes back to the heart, leaves the right side of the heart, goes to the lungs, then leaves the lungs and goes to the left side of the heart, and then from the left side of the heart, leaves the left ventricle and then out to the rest of the body, the periphery. So this is the general pattern of vessel organization. Peripheral distribution of arteries and veins on the left and right sides are identical, except near the heart where we have those large veins, right, and large arteries. But otherwise, you know, what you have on your right side of your body, you have on the left side of your body. Any single vessel can have several names, but as it crosses anatomical boundaries, we're going to change names. So it's kind of like, think of a road, that you stay on the same road and you don't make any turns, but because you passed over a certain landmark, now it's going to be called something else, right? The road just changes names for whatever reason. It's the same way in your body. So once we'll say the brachiocephalic vein crosses into your shoulder area or your armpit area, it's now the axillary, or it's the subclavian because it's under your clavicle. And then it becomes the axillary because it's in your armpit. And then it becomes the brachial because it's on your arm, right? So it's the same pathway, it's the same track. The blood hasn't made any turns or done anything, but it's just changing names. So the same vessel can have several names depending on where it is in the body. Tissues and organs are generally serviced by several arteries and veins, and that's because of the anastomosis, right? We're going to make sure that the blood can get to that area no matter what, so we'll fuse some arteries together to make sure that, well, if that artery is blocked, well, you know, the blood can still get through this artery. So any occlusions or blockages can prevent damage of tissue with those anastomosis. Okay, so that was just a summary. Let's move on. Pulmonary circuit. The arteries of our pulmonary circuit are very different from the arteries in our systemic circuit. They're smaller, right? They don't need to be as big and trusty, right? They form and they branch off of something called the pulmonary trunk. So the pulmonary trunk is the one large artery that's actually leaving our right ventricle. That pulmonary trunk branches into right and left halves. You have your right and left pulmonary arteries. Your right and left pulmonary arteries branch into smaller arteries and then pulmonary arterioles. The pulmonary arterioles branch into and divide into the alveolar capillaries. So the capillaries in the lungs are called alveolar capillaries. The alveolar capillaries are surrounding the alveoli. The alveoli are the air pockets inside of our lungs. A lot of new vocabulary right there in that sentence. So pulmonary arteries branch into pulmonary arterioles. It's equal on both left and right sides. The pulmonary arterioles branch into the alveolar capillaries. From the alveolar capillaries are surrounding the alveoli, which are the air pockets inside the lungs. This is where gas exchange occurs. The oxygenated blood is going to return through small venules, and then those small venules join to form the pulmonary veins. There's right and left. There's two on the right and there's two on the left. The pulmonary veins drain into the left atrium. Here it is in anatomical imagery. I suggest, again, touch the picture, print it out, hopefully you have it in front of you. If not, touch your computer screen, pause it, touch it, and trace this pathway. See if you can trace it through the pulmonary circuit. So we're going from our right atrium, which is where all the blood returns from the body, to our right ventricle, to our pulmonary trunk. Say it as you touch it. Pulmonary trunk divides into right and left pulmonary arteries. Then we have our pulmonary arterioles. Then we have our alveolar capillaries. From the alveolar capillaries, we're going into our pulmonary veins, or our pulmonary arteries, pulmonary veins, which bring all of that blood back into the left atrium, then the left ventricle, and then out of the heart. You can pause the video here, stop, review these questions, make sure you can answer them completely without cheating, and we'll be back to talk about the systemic circuit and that flow of blood.